Well, hello and a happy new year to you all. I hope 2025 is off to a cracking start. I also hope that you're holding on tight to those New Year's resolutions. If you have let a few slip, don't stress too much. You're in good company, and it means you'll be able to focus on things that really are important, which I hope includes tuning into this podcast every week. And to our returning guests, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support and hope that you'll consider joining an episode this year. For our new viewers and listeners, hello, and a very warm welcome to you. My name is Mark Morley, and this is the IT Business Partner Playbook, a new series where I'll be joined every week by business partners and business relationship managers from around the globe. We'll be finding out what they love about their roles, what they don't like so much, and what tools or techniques they use to help them not only deliver real business value, but also help their colleagues do the same. Our hope is that those who listen in or watch these episodes will find the support and the inspiration they need to improve and grow their own capabilities, but also those of their organizations too. In our last episode, we met with Bhupinder Saran, the Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships at the University of Southampton. I really enjoyed that episode, and one thing that stood out for me during that conversation was how Bhupinder's team had changed their titles to ensure that their purpose was more readily understood by their colleagues, and how the use of language and terminology and titles have a profound influence on the impact of this role. This week, I'm really happy to be joined by Dawn Milward, a business partner at the Birmingham City University. You can see a trend here with my guests, and while our intent was not to focus on universities, I have to say there's a very close and really well organised BRM community within the UK universities, and I hope that this can somehow be replicated across the globe. There's a lot of wonderful, innovative and really passionate members. I think we can learn a lot from them all. So Dawn, whose smile is immediately infectious, is another person who seems to be born for this role. She's passionate and purposeful and a real people person. So all the P's. Thanks so much for joining me today, Dawn. We've been trying to get this together since the series started, and while things, I'm sure, aren't getting any quieter for you, I'm really grateful that you've been able to make time today to share your story. So if I can hand over to you for an introduction, and then we can just settle into some cozy conversation.
Yes, I'm Dawn Milward. I work as business partner for IT and digital with Birmingham City University. I work alongside two other colleagues that are in the business partner team, Josh Bentley and Paul Aspel, and we report into Paul Williams and what's known as at BCU as the IT leadership team. So we work alongside them within the university. But yeah, well, hi, nice to be here.
Great. No, thanks so much for joining us. So as I've asked a few of our other guests today, a good way to get an insight into your world is just to ask them what today looks like for you. What will you be doing, and what's needed of you today?
Oh, I've got a really varied day today. I mean, we were just briefly chatting before we started off with my daughter. She's got Young Voices tonight at the NEC, so we had a bit of putting a bow in her hair, but it was bowgate. She didn't want to put a bow in her hair, so that's a bit of a challenge this morning. Because I'm a mum to two young daughters, so we had to get them ready for school and everything that they need to do before that. Usually I'm out actually first thing. My husband will drop my girls where he can, or my mum, and then the rest of the day I've got a variety of meetings today. Some are in person, so I'll be on campus. Some are via Teams. We use Teams at Birmingham City University. We've got an NSS meeting in person this afternoon where we collaborate across the university because the launch of the NSS, which is really important to us. I've got a Windows 11 because we're launching Windows 11, so we've got a pilot group for that. And then I've got some stakeholder meetings as well. And then it's home this evening, obviously, over to the NEC for the Young Voices, so my day won't finish till extremely late tonight as usual.
And as a working mum must be a real challenge. I mean, me as a dad, I get to hand over the kids to my wife, which is quite useful. But as a mum, you work all during the day, and then you get to carry on working when you get home as well. So
yeah,
it's pretty tough, I can imagine.
It is really. I think what I've learned to do over the years, so I've been in technology pretty much since I was 21, 22. I've got a real passion for technology. So I started off as a research chemist, which is a bit strange. So I had a passion of science technology. That's my my thing. So I studied quite hard, really, science all the way through school, through, doing my A-levels, through college, university. But what I didn't realise is when I went into research, my first post was a research chemist. I had to do a 5-hour interview, which was quite tough then. And I think the salary at the time was something like £6,000 a year. I mean, now people wouldn't do that at all, would they? But I did that post for a year and I could have continued it, but I just found it sounds crazy, but it wasn't busy. With research, something might never happen. You were busy, but it wasn't, I didn't feel challenged in that way. It's strange. I like to be moving around, doing things, having an input, making a difference. Research made a difference. It was a product called Tensile. And we achieved what we needed to do within that year. And it's in market now. I see Tensile products, which is lovely. But I moved into telecommunications after that. I went in as a graduate in a telecommunications company. And I found with that, I'd found my fit. I loved working alongside engineers. I loved the fast-pacedness, of that. So I worked in telecommunications. Then I moved into more of telecoms IT when we went voice and data, because a lot of the telecoms roles went. And then I found myself in transformation lead roles within the NHS, and then over to where I am now. So yeah, it's been quite varied. But being a mum throughout that, the one thing I can say is that you find as a woman in technology, if you take a break, it's really hard to get back in. So throughout, my career has always been quite prominent for me. So I've never taken a year out. I've never taken a break or a sabbatical or anything like that. I don't think it's in the gift of women to do that. That's one thing I have found. And that's quite tough.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I always assume that kind of nowadays things have leveled out a bit, and that kind of thing shouldn't impact. But it sounds like that's very much being a woman, a man myself. I can't understand what it is to be a woman working in these fields. But do you still feel that way, that it really is? You just can't afford to take any time out because you are going to kind of slip back and maybe not even be allowed back in.
Oh, absolutely. It's never left me. I'm in my 50s now and I've got 2 small children. I didn't have them till I was in my 40s. But it's never left me right from the very beginning. You feel like you're putting your armour on every day and you're going into battle sometimes, and it's just that feeling. But what I do find, it's quite challenging, I think, because especially women my age, I don't know if they would resonate with this, but I think there's a certain persona that you feel you have to have, and it's really difficult to be authentic in that way because you've always competed in that field. I mean, it was male dominated when I first entered the technology. I was always the only female in the room. And the default quite often with females in the room is, Dawn, would you just do the notes for us? Could you just do that for us? Oh, you're better at that. And you think, is that just a cop out? So and it's really hard to challenge that because yes, I can. I'm good at doing all of the different things in the roles, but you just feel like But as time's gone on, it has got better. But your head is always in that space. That I was always the one female in the room, so I've always really wanted other females to come into the industry. It's really a passion of mine. STEM roles. Where I've got 2 young daughters. That's really important to me. And right from the very start, I've always acted as a mentor, a coach. If I could see a spark of something or somebody would want to go into a technical field, but they didn't feel confident, working with them to encourage them. And I even set an academy up at the university, to bring young graduates through. It was so important to me to say, across the board, males and females, but particularly with girls, young girls, that they don't realise that, technology has lots of different facets. And I think that's where, if you can talk to someone and say, look, if you really want to do this, there's lots of different elements that you can explore. And when business partnering became more evident, because it was quite a new emerging thing, really. When I saw that on a page, I thought, oh my goodness, that's me. That is me on a page. I don't quite know what this role is, but I know all of my years of experience that have led me to this point is that. And now I can talk to that role as well. And I can say to, young girls and anybody coming through, this might be a role for you. You sort of take lots of different areas of your skill set and take it forward. And I think that's really important, so yeah.
It's wonderful. So that's so the business partner role that you're in now, that's something you saw advertised and you thought I'd go for it, or is it something you helped create within the university?
No, it was something I went for. I was a digital transformation lead in the NHS. So I'd worked in the NHS for a few years in different roles. Predominantly in leaning towards training at that point. It was sort of training and development lead, so developing people coming through, looking at their training plans, curriculums, etc. And that's how I entered into the university. That's the role that I came into the IT department as. And one of the business partners had seen a different role, and there was like an internal offering of this business partner role. And they said, is anybody interested? And when I looked at it, because I wasn't actually, because I'm quite loyal to the roles that I'm in, I've never really courted roles. I've never been that really ambitious person. But people have said to me, Dawn, you should be doing that. Why are you not doing that? That's something for you. And when I read it, I just thought, oh my goodness, can talk, can get on with people, are interested in people, because I think that's so important. Interested in moving people forward, the institution making it successful. I think that role absolutely lends itself. If you're passionate about where you work and it's important to you, this is absolutely the role for you. If you're looking for accreditation as in accolades, I would say probably not so. We get that through the BRM network and our own network, which is wonderful. We're a real team. The BRM network really for me is family. We support each other. We talk about our days. It's quite a challenging role in lots of different ways, but it's such a rewarding role. But the rewards come through you empowering and making the institutions shine, making the areas that you support shine, and your team. So there's a hell of a lot of work that you do that people don't even realise you're doing, but you've got the skills and to do that. You're moving and steering everybody towards strategic, being strategic partners. And I think seeing that and doing the work behind it is wonderful. So that's where we sit,
One of the questions that always comes up whenever you're around other BRMs, they're always saying, how do we demonstrate our value? And I think it's a shame really, because the BRM role, we see it as so critical. It's why we got involved with the Institute in the first place. But it does seem that there are a lot of companies and organizations out there that don't really understand the role properly, don't really understand what it should be doing. And so if you get a new person coming in, it's easy to question what this team is doing. But for me, the easiest way to demonstrate your value is to show the value you've helped other people achieve. So you don't have your own goals necessarily, but you have the goals of everyone that you're helping. But it can, I suppose, be quite difficult to show that. So is there any way that you can show what value you've brought to the organisation?
Absolutely, and I always think through song. My dad used to work for a record producer years and years ago, so I always put songs on. So on days that I'm finding it a bit challenging, I'll put Alison Moyet's Invisible on. Look, I'm invisible. And there's all sorts of songs, so I get myself all geared up. It's quite funny, really. But no, I always do things through song, and I just think right in my head. There's so much going on in my head all of the time. But yeah, I think for me, I joined as a business partner in lockdown. So if you can imagine how challenging that was. So I just thought, right, okay, how can I add value here? How can I give the exposure to myself so people know who I am, what I'm doing? I always knew from the start what my role was. I've always known what I offer and what I can do as a BRM, as a BP. We're known as business partners in my institution. And I think that throughout that, because I know the value of the role and what we do, I've used all the tools and techniques that we've really sort of evolved, haven't we? Started off with the BRMP course, bedding in, understanding those principles, and then moving on to the CBRM, which has been absolutely invaluable, because at the point that I did that, everything was cemented then. But yeah, I think really having that in me that I understand what we do. But from sort of challenges and things going through, I think when I started, it was really making those connections initially. I wanted to make sure that people knew who I was and I knew who they were. They saw me on camera, because a lot of people keep their cameras off in COVID, don't they? But it was just those quick 10-minute check-ins. Hi, it's Dawn. Any challenges? What's happening for you? Just chatting, really, understanding actually what every role that you support is doing and what they're trying to achieve. And by that connections and really understanding how people work, because I people watch all the time. I could sit in a cafe and watch. I love watching what people are wearing, how they act, how they interact. And every single character of somebody, you can, as a BRM, you can tap into that. And if you understand how somebody likes to work and how effective they are in their space, then you can work well with them. So I always make sure there's not one mechanism for me. If you like using Teams, we'll use Teams. If you want email, we'll do email. If you want to come and sit and have a chat and we'll go through something, we will. If you're more of a formal person, you just have time with me and it's you've got 30 minutes, we're discussing this. That's fine as well, however we do it. But every single interaction is us moving forward together. And I think that's one of the things for me, we're always, even now, we're, by the podcast you're doing, I think sharing, how we're doing our ways, what we're doing, this is moving forward. Even if one thing resonates with somebody and helps them, then that would be really useful. But yeah, in the early days, it was really making those connections, understanding who I'm supporting, what we're doing in IT, and then which we can share as we go through. But then I've progressed from that into where we are today, which is great,
How well understood and how well viewed are the business partner team within the organisation, within the university?
I think where we are today, very well. But I think it's because of the way we've progressed through. You still get, what does a BRM, what does a BP do? What is it we're doing? You will always get that, but that's usually on a day that somebody you're talking to is quite stressed as well. It's like, what are we here for today? I've just come out of this meeting, I'm going into that meeting. What are we talking about? And you just think, oh gosh. So every meeting sometimes, and then, so what I find is, you'll suddenly notice the shift from people having a misunderstanding to having an understanding when they're really bringing you into the conversation more on that strategic side. You can get drawn into the tactical, but if you use certain things that I know have worked for me to move away from that space and have more BP-led discussions. So where you can see your general meetings aren't working or your one-to-ones aren't working for the space you need to be in, then you can, as a business partner, move into that space by you leading that. So I've found that's been really useful as well.
And so so these are one of the things you find helps move it forward is by leading things better. I assume to do that, you need to have a really good understanding of their side of the business. So I'm guessing that means there's research involved from your side, I guess, to know what these people are involved in and what's kind of coming down the line for them.
Oh, absolutely. I think you have to have a real interest in your institution. There's so much work that you do behind the scenes that people don't even realise. If you are, I would say, if you're an effective business relationship manager, you do your homework and you have a real passion and interest for your institution and also the horizon scanning. So you have to have an understanding of your field. If you can bring external in as well from your experience or research in there, that's so useful as well. I visited Jeremy at Rolls-Royce and Pez. We went out because we went out. So still have those really solid foundations of corporate, private and public sector to give a real holistic view of how businesses work, what's effective, keeping abreast of technology. What I find in HE, AI is the buzzword at the moment. We had Internet of Things, everything comes through. But the buzzwords sometimes can derail you because it's where you are as an institution, So at the moment we've been looking at our networks, we're doing all of our project portfolio work, there's things that you still need to make sure that the basics are really important to what are your customers really? The areas that I support are the customers of IT. So when I go into that space, the basics are really important to them. Are the rooms working when a lecturer goes into a room? Is the AV working, etc. And then I'm having conversations with the business about, artificial intelligence and what products and things we can use safely. Because we attained our cybersecurity accreditation because security is so important. But I would say, coming back to what we were saying, is it's really important that you do the groundwork. So when I started as training manager, what I found, it was really alien at the time because you find most technical departments are very process driven. They have a certain way that they work. And at the time, most people didn't move out of the department. And I think that's what BRM brings to the institution, that you're suddenly connecting people. But I used to go and sit, in another building where they'd got a student radio at the time. So I could hear what the students wanted, what was current for them, what did they want. They're our ultimate customers. What are they chatting about, what are they, what's their thoughts and feelings and things. I'd go and sit in the library. Quiet spaces, how effective are our spaces that we're using, because we have technology embedded in every area. I'd go over to our CCAL office, which is predominantly our health, education and life sciences. Are the community coming in there? Are we offering things to the local communities? And there's so much to the institutions that you are in, that if you don't move around those institutions, if you don't understand your customer base, your colleagues, the areas you support, what's important to them, it makes you a little bit less effective in the role that we do. And what you start to see then is how challenged certain areas are, what they may need, things you can bring back to your departments to say, actually, no, we might be focusing in that area, but we really need to be focusing in that area. That's really where we need to be. And it sort of links in back to that where you were saying, do people really understand what you do? In the early stages, they probably don't. Because unless you put the groundwork in alongside that of introducing and doing presentations to your own team of what you do, how you interact, and how important it is that you help them to make the connections with the business as well. Our training manager I've invited, and they're coming out to one of my meetings this week to talk about training. So I think it's so important, and I think that's where really you evolve in that way. But you must know and put the work in about your institution and where you work. It's so key.
I think this is the big difference between organisations that use BRM as just a first point of contact, like an escalation route, and just a way of someone to bring in to help something get done, rather than someone who is strategic, who is forward thinking, who is thinking about what else can be done by IT for the rest of the business. I think that's for a lot of BRMs and business partners are disappointed and unhappy in their roles because they want to do that, but the organisation just doesn't allow it because that's not how BRM is viewed.
Yeah, you must never lose your momentum. Always know that what you're doing is absolutely integral to the business, and you have your BRM network to help lift you up if you're having a bad day. I think that's so important, and the colleagues around you, if you can, you must always see that what you're doing is so important, and set up a community of practice. We do that. I've gone out to other business partners in the business who don't work so much as we do. We're accredited, we've got a format that we do. But I in the early days said, when there was like team meetings, I said to them, could we come in? It used to be that the business partners were asked 1 in 4 to a senior management meeting, but now we're in everyone. And so is the HR business partner, the marketing business partner, the finance, because, one of the areas I support, I said, it's so valuable, me understanding what your challenges are. I'm almost like a silent partner for a time. But then what you find is they'll start asking your advice, and you'll start chipping in on conversations, and they'll see the value of what you do. And that's where that role, can really evolve. Sorry.
It's definitely circular, isn't it? Because the more you want to be involved, and the more you appear to be interested,
Yeah.
sincerely in what these people are doing, the more that they'll accept you in. And then, like you say, because you're in those rooms, you're hearing what's going on, and then you can start to participate and suggest things. They can see what value you're bringing, and then you don't have to ask to be invited anymore. They want you in those meetings. They know that you'll be helpful to be in there. So that's yes, it's a great way to get involved. Rather than kind of suggesting, I should be in this meeting. I want to be in this meeting. I'm your partner. I should be there. It's just invite me along. Let me listen in to what you're doing. Let me learn from you, and then you can start to participate. And then they'll see the value you can bring from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've never courted things actively where there's been a pushback initially, because I think you have to let things evolve. People have to be in the right mindset at the right time to embrace you in that. Because you're a little bit you're in IT, but you're on the outside of IT because you're working with your areas, and you're with your areas, but you're a little bit on the outside of those because you're a member of IT. So it's a really no man's land type thing. But what you have to do is not see it as no man's land. See it as, actually, I am in that camp. I'm also in that camp, but we're all one camp. You have to see it as what. Yeah, you've got the top-down view, and I think where I've always positioned it, I've always said, as your BP, where it would be really lovely for us to be is that you see me as, strategy, business transition, and value. That's the 3 core things for me. And value is always the one that's the most challenging. And they say, value, what do you mean? What's value? And I think when you can really have those conversations and say, look, this is it, and you can use the tools that you've got to do that, which is lovely. You can really start to see that, because one thing I do find with technical departments is they're very good at the project side. As you have a project, it's a very ordered thing. We've got a start, we've got a middle, we've got a finish. But it's that business transition piece. How many times do you implement something, but then it goes, that wasn't very good? But it's that handover, it's that transition. So that's where your BP is really, really useful, because you can see the end to end, and you can see, within BCU, we've got to a point where we work really closely. We've tried to make sure, as in the business partner role, that we are linking areas. So you always have in higher education, you always have a pipeline. So you have what we call a pipe. So it's all the ideas and concepts coming in, and then you have the work through, you assess it, you've got your delivery phase, etc. Then it comes out the other end. But what you often find, and I know this is a challenge, it's been a challenge across the piece, is PMO, so the project management office. It's always a challenge for a business partner group, because they don't always understand fully where you come into that process, and they almost want to take it over. But the pipeline really isn't a project pipeline. It's not in ITIL, it's your business partners entering all the everything in and part of the business planning. But you often find the project side of things want to do the business plan, they want to lead it. So what we did, we looked at it differently, and we thought, okay, if that world is becoming more of a project area, which it isn't really meant to be, we've segmented, and what would be like the pre-pipeline, we've put as a whole separate process. So we've got something called, which we designed as business partners within BCU, and we call it the opportunity tracker. Because as a in our role, we work quite closely with architecture. That's something that we would always, our business analysts, they're so integral to what we do, our technical design architects, our architecture director. So we have a separate thing called the opportunity tracker, and that's where we've designed it as a shaping exercise.
Okay.
So we shape in that area. So if I go out to our health, I look after loads of different areas. I look after faculty and professional services departments. If they've got a new concept or something they want to do, I don't know, they might want an externally facing website in marketing, or they might want something for a different area. That's what your business partner will take back, and you'll start to put a shape around it. So that's what we do. We do that in the opportunity phase. So we've got a completely separate Trello board that we use where we look at it, like discovery phases and progressing. And at the point that we've got a real shape and we've worked with our architects on it and we've got some costs and we've got a shape around it, then we put it into our pre-pipeline. So it's almost the form's done and it's ready. And that works really effectively. And it's taken that little bit of the PMO trying to really come in and say, that's our area, and we say, actually, no, that's a business part of function. That's what we do. That's where we're effective, and we're with the business more in those meetings to understand what they need. We now need to look at this, and then it goes into the pipeline, and then it can be assessed more formally, and then the prioritization for the business. Is it something we want to do now?
Right.
Is it something we want to do in 2 years' time? Is the funding, but where's the support model on the back of it? Do we need to think about that? Because we get, we bid for money, etc. So it's really good. So we've taken control of that. So it's worked really effectively.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I've heard a number of times actually that the project managers kind of butt heads with the BPs often and BRMs.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But they're quite different roles, and the thing with the project managers is as you said, they're very good at making sure that something starts and has a middle and has an end and is managed the way through.
Yeah.
But they don't again have the oversight. One thing that really stunned me when we first got involved with the Institute and started talking to BRMs is how these IT projects, which are called IT projects, but they're not.
Yes, they're business projects, yeah.
With a technology element. But how many of these things do fail? And not fail because they haven't finished. They've been successful and they've run to budget and they've been completed. But it's not what the business asked for in the first place. So IT have been given something to do, and then they're left to it. And then they go and build it and then deliver it, what they think is right. But in the meantime, either things have changed in the business, so it doesn't apply anymore, or what they feel just was never really what business asked for. And you end up with, we've heard of these things, hundreds of millions of dollars, IT system delivered, and then they just get canned. And you think, wow, the amount of business a company has to do to generate enough to cover that written off IT project. But this is where I think the business relationship managers and business partners are so critical, because they do have that holistic oversight, the aerial view, where they can just keep an eye on these things and see, if the business don't want to get directly involved, which I think they should. But if they're not going to, then the BRMs can go in and just look at these projects that are going on, just make sure they're still going to deliver the value they originally intended to, that they're still relevant, that another project hasn't kicked off in the meantime, it's going to do something better. So for me, this is another really powerful or another place that BRM's had a lot of value, is just making sure that these projects are ongoing, are going to deliver value, are going to not end up wasting millions of dollars or pounds. And that they're keeping track of everything that's coming through the pipeline, so that some things that the business think they might need, they don't really need, or there's something else that's already kind of in the pipeline that's going to do the same thing. So that for me was a big eye opener. I just thought, wow, just that alone makes the BRM or BP function totally worth it.
Oh, I think so. And if you think of all the areas take our IT department, for example, the project management is one area. It's not all of it. You've got architecture, you've got operations, you've got the project side, we've got customer care, we've got a head of customer care, and the business partnering at the moment fits into there really nicely, because that's where we've been able to obtain our CSE accreditation. And the reason we went for the CSE accreditation, it wasn't even really for the accreditation, because sometimes the badge is really nice to have, but it was to look at embedding a cultural change, a culture. We are customer facing. This is something that we do, and move away from, like you say, that break and fix perception. We're entering junior spas, we're collaborating with libraries, to put a more welcoming space for the students. And when they come in, it's not, the days of when I first started, it was a long time ago. And when you think, it used to be somebody from a technical department, if your printer broke or something happened, they'd come to your desk and say, oh, could you step away? Would you like to stand over there a moment? I'm really important. I need to fix this. You can't possibly know.
Yeah, I don't want to involve you in this black magic that I'm doing.
I'm like this magician, But as things have evolved, and I do think COVID had a big part in this, all of a sudden, people had to undertake technology themselves. All of a sudden, you was at home and you had this mechanism, to talk to people and, through a lens, etc. And it was like, oh, how do I connect it? What do I do? How do I set up at home? What do I do? And I think because of that now, people don't fear technology as much, which is fantastic. But it's made it really difficult for technical departments, because before there was like this air of mystery over here. It's like, wow, you're amazing. But now it's actually, can we work together? And that's what your BP does. If you're a business relationship manager, you're saying, actually, I quite like to take away the mystery of technology. Let's work together. If I know something, I want you to know it and I want you to be able to do it. And then we can concentrate on doing this other stuff as well, which is great for you. And you know how to do this now, because people do that. My 9-year-old daughter, she's on her phone, technically. And I know the argument that they keep having, don't give children phones, don't do that. And I'm thinking, absolutely not. Just educate them in safety. They're going to need these devices. They do homework on them, and teaching and learning is so integral, obviously, to our world. I always say to our technical department, we really need to understand teaching and learning is so integral to what we do. What are the children and what are the, everybody coming through now? How do they learn? What do they do? And that's where we need to have our head. We need to think, what do they need? Because my daughter she'll ask Google. She'll say, hey, what do I do with this? Or how do I spell this? So we need to look at things differently now. How can technology embed how we live? Everybody's 24/7. We have caring responsibilities. We're financially stretched, etc., etc. People are working from home, which is fantastic. It's opened up a whole new world to everyone. So I look at things a little bit differently, and I think let's embrace technology. Let's embed it, and let's see how we can impart as much information and work together in as many different ways we can to move forward. And that would be fantastic if we could get to that space, and really it's everywhere for us then, isn't it? So
I think that another one of the challenges that has arisen probably following COVID is that people that didn't want to get involved in technology had to, but now their eyes have been opened to what's out there, and now they're going looking for these things.
Yeah.
And the one time they might have asked for something and someone said, no, you can't do that. But now people know, well, actually, you can do that. And I can actually download this tomorrow and do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm going to. And I think this has been a big problem for a lot of companies, that people are just helping themselves out. And so they're downloading apps and bringing, information into environments that there isn't, it shouldn't be there. So I think that's probably a whole challenge in itself, is just trying to control these things now and making sure that IT isn't a roadblock. It's just helping people manage to bring in these things that they have found.
Yeah, I think what we've done at BCU, so as a business partner pool of the three of us, we're finding with our areas, obviously free software, downloadable, use, and it's a minefield. There's the things we've had to shut down, and all these different things with our security. But we work really closely with our ops director and our security lead, so that we've been able to shape certain policies, procedures. We work closely with what's classed as our EDS department, which is our Education Development Service. So that's where our teaching and learning leads are, all our content developers, etc. And what we've done, we've done almost a roadmap of software, different entries and ways that things can come into the department. Sometimes it's a ticket, sometimes it's ask your business partner, all these different areas, so that we can do a map and say, right, we're going to standardize and see a way of doing this as a whole, because accessibility is a challenge. Access to work, somebody's told that they can use a certain piece of software, in their terms and conditions, that might make us quite vulnerable from a security perspective. So we've worked really closely with that area to then look at our catalogue, our website, what we can and can't, offer as recommendations. Because in the early stages, especially with AI, we didn't want to put out a list of things that we would recommend to use. We thought that would be dangerous, really. What we wanted to do, we thought, actually, no, we'll work on a set of guiding principles. We want to educate the business and everybody that works there in security. We do forums. You can join a forum and they'll talk about things, that's really great that they are, from an operations perspective. So again, that's the ops director going out to the business and saying, I'm available to do this chat with you. I'm also going to do a presentation for you, things that are current, things, pitfalls. We've done it on all sorts of things, protecting yourself. And we've looked at, mobile phone policy, everything that we do. And I think by doing that, we're getting to a point now where we can offer, a really robust service catalogue. We've worked with our EDS colleagues to say, look, from a teaching and learning perspective, we would say these are the fundamental principles to keep you safe and things we would recommend possibly you could use, but we're not saying it's an exhaustive list. And that still makes it that the person at the end of it can still be creative, but they will know if they go to click on something whether really they should be or not, and can they use it. And then from a cost perspective, we're able to have a really top-down view of a business and see, if you've got pockets of people over here using a certain amount of software, that they're actually using it over here as well. And these people are using something similar, but it's costing us such a lot. So we can look at it that way. Is there a better way of us doing this? So we work with procurement. So coming back to your point of, we don't just work in sort of project management. We cut across everything. Can we look at everything, don't we, and see the best way to move forward as a business, so.
Yeah, that's really, really great.
Yeah.
Do you have your team of three? Do you have a BRM strategy that you've developed, a business partner strategy? Where does your team roll up into? Do you kind of manages your function?
Well, what we do, we're classed as senior management team. So we have an IT steering group. So we come together with the leaders of each of the areas. So the areas that are managed. So for example, you'll have 5 leads within IT. So you've got Nick, who's ultimately the IT director. And then we've got an ops director, architecture director, head of customer care, a finance and training director. So that's sort of the directorship. And your business partners always sit alongside that, and the ITSG, which is your steering group. So within there, you've got your managers of certain functions like training manager and comms manager. So we that's sort of the structure. We all work very closely as a team. And we make sure, and actually at the moment, talking about strategy, business partnering strategies, we're in the process of at the moment of putting almost an internal comms plan together for how we communicate between us. Because I had a conversation last week with my director and I said, it's leveraging quickly intel, really. How we leverage quickly intel across the seniors within the team, the business partners and the leaders, and the steering group of things that are quite key, directions of travel, things we're picking up in meetings that would be really important. And that's what we're doing at the moment. We're having another look at that. We're looking at our business plan at the moment. We've done an engagement strategy, so an engagement with the business, and internally. So that's really key. But I think all of those things are driven by your business partner. So we introduced the concept. So I initiated the meeting last week with my director and said, I've noticed, that from a comms perspective, I think we could be slicker. I think we could have that quick, round of things we're picking up and direction of travel, because all of our areas are writing strategies at the moment for the next 3 years, and we've just launched our 2030 strategy as an institution. So it's really key that we are aligning everything to what the business strategy is, our strategy, and then all the areas that we support strategy. So we've got various things, but it's very much BP led, which is great. So we're in all of those different areas,
Yeah, and then how we would hope it would be. Because I know in a lot of places that isn't the case. That people kind of tend to have their own strategies, and then they just hope that it might be the same direction, but it often doesn't. So
So I think with the I think one thing I would say, what I've found is there has to be trust with your areas. You are sitting in situations where you'll be privy to some information that would never be shared outside of that room. So you have to be quite savvy as a BP. You have to think, right, okay, I'm hearing a lot of information here all day in different areas. That shouldn't leave the room. That's for share, because it's been said that it's for share in the meeting. And then there's other things that you think, actually, that would be so useful if I could share it with my own team, even as a knowledge base, as something that really, just as a line of sight, are on my radar or their radar for what might be coming. And that's where you can say in that meeting, or separately to the chair of the meeting, and say, look, that would be really useful. Can I, at this point, share that? And I think if you've got that level of trust, and that is a given, and that comes with time, you have to do that, then yes, you can. And I think people will embrace you then into that situation, because they know all you're trying to do ultimately is move the business forward with them. So trust is so important. If you're going from meeting to meeting and saying things that you shouldn't really be doing, that they're not going to want you in that space anymore. And that goes for IT members as well. Your colleagues, more than ever, have to trust that you're working for them as well as you're working for everybody, so.
Sure. I noticed that we're running short of time now. No, this is great, because this has all been wonderful stuff that we can share with those listening. If I could ask just for one parting pearl of wisdom, if you're, in your particular role, what has helped you deal with the pressures or the opportunities that being a BRM brings with it? What if there's any advice you could offer other people, what might it be?
I think always come back to that job spec. Always come back to that narrative at the beginning and know why you went into the role. Some days are incredibly challenging, but everyone has a spark of brilliance. And if you look for that spark of brilliance in everybody you're with, and you can see them moving forward, whether it's an area or person, it's wonderful. So on the days that you might think, oh gosh, this has been so hard today, and 10 people have said, what does a BP do? Come back to why you're doing it. And I think if you can come back to why you're doing it and know that your character traits and your skill set lends itself to that, I think then you will understand, why that is so absolutely integral. And you can see from our network now, we're making great strides across the globe. We really are moving businesses from being very tactical to being very strategic. And I think if you have that in your heart, then you will be absolutely fine.
Wonderful. Lovely. Well, thanks so much, Dawn. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. As there's so much in there that I think is going to be really helpful to those listening. So I really appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. Thank you again, Dawn. It's been a pleasure. And I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks again, everyone, for listening and watching. And please remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks very much. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just hit my screen.